I cannot imagine that all of us are together. Totally unbelievable, a very surreal experience. So I just want to share with you how all this happened. As the world went into lockdown, we were forced to into a solitude. We had to be quiet. We had to be with ourselves, causing us to reevaluate our personal and collective priorities and rethink the way we do almost everything. That is when a thought came to me, and I shared this feeling with some of my friends, that when we come out of this, we should actively refuse to join the rat race. We must all stand together and say no to this unnatural pace. Many questions followed, such as, please, can we redefine success? Is getting 96% the only goal of a child, a parent, and educator? Can we stop defining excellence by comparing one child from another? Can they learn at their own pace and in their own style? Do we want to consider asking children what they want to learn? Basically, the main question is, can we truly become facilitators? Somewhere along the way, we are completely losing sight of what really matters. It's time for us to give emotional, social, and happiness quotients the importance that they deserve. So when we were forced to shut down our classrooms, and schools and educators almost closed their eyes and took a deep dive into online classrooms, trying to find ways to ensure that the syllabus was covered and that children wouldn't lag behind in their learning. It's been such a struggle for the teachers. We weren't given even a moment to think, to ponder over what we were trying to do. What are we trying to achieve? In fact, I feel we should be using this time to hit the pause button. The remote is now in our hands. Why should we just press play and watch the same show? We can change the channel, and if all the channels are not worthwhile, is it time now to make a brand new film? It is with these thoughts that we started the Early Childhood Education Zone, a space for educators to share concerns and find solutions so that we can give our children our best. So here we are, and this is the moment, a moment to reflect, a moment to find learning moments. We have invited all of you today to hit that pause button and for all of us together to find the right direction, the right balance to step into the new world. And who better to get us started on this journey than our friend, Dr. Suneeta Kulkarni. We share the same philosophy of what we have termed as genuine learning, one which places the onus of learning on the child. We have full faith that given an environment of freedom and some stimulation, the child will learn. So let me introduce Suneeta. So Suneeta's passion in all her work is just amazing. When Suneeta speaks of child-centered learning, then no one except the child is important. When she talks about assessment, then each child also assesses their own progress. Her experience and empathy make her an amazing resource person for parents. She has then now, since some time, been involved with the Granny Cloud. And anyone who hasn't seen what that is, please do find out. She has been successfully changing the lives of children in rural areas using technology, and that is here. And she's here today to share some first-hand experiences with us. We are just so fortunate to have her there. So post-retirement, she indulges in writing about children and their world. Did you hear the last sentence? Post-retirement. So Suneeta, you must be joking. People like you never tire and never retire. We are going to have a lot to learn from her. So over to you, Suneeta. But before she begins, a few instructions. Please keep your mic on mute. There are reaction buttons at the base of your screen that you can use at all times. You can also use the chat function. During the question and answer session, you can use the raise hand function and we will call upon you to make your comment or ask your question. Finally, a delightful lunch will be served after the webinar in your kitchen. Over to you, Suneeta.
Thank you very much. I was wondering when you're going to stop embarrassing me. All right. Thanks a lot. And thank you to everybody for joining this. We had joked about the possibility that nobody would turn up and it would just be 4 or 5 of us catching up on old times. And you know, I mean, we haven't met for quite a few years, so that's what we would do, share a cup of tea and be on our way. And then we realized that, well, suddenly there were quite a few people who were interested in discussing this. Wanted to remember a person that some of us in this group know of, but when I speak with youngsters these days, many of them haven't actually heard of this person. And this person happens to be Taratai Modak. The reason I want to mention her is not because, I mean, there's loads of things to thank her for, but what I want to remember her for today is her ability to take on challenges. I want to remember her today for her ability to make use of local resources. Wanted to start with a very quick remembrance of Taratai, mainly for these two reasons. And also because I think we sometimes forget what's in our backyard. We go in search of resources and we go in search of help all across the world. And I think that's a wonderful thing to do. However, I think it's also important to not forget what's available to you within hand's reach.
Friends, I think most of you are aware of our resonances. In these last 4 weeks or so, we have been posting activities for about 5 groups, age groups, every single day. Now, the activities are of all the things which are easily available to the parent at home. So very often it could be something as simple as try to fit in your utensils on a tray, or just do some treasure hunt, or help mama in washing the utensils, or drying utensils. So the activities are very simple and yet they are graded as per the age group. I don't know how many of you have been actually having a look at them, and I don't know if you find them useful, but I think some of the responses from parents have been tremendous, where they feel that the activities are so simply designed and yet so effective, and they serve the purpose of learning, as one would call it, because parents are quite concerned about missing out their school and not being able to do all their regular formal structured learning. And so we have tried to tell them that, look, the same objective can be served by actually making use of whatever is available to you. Now, I mean, since she is mentioned about Tarabai Modak, I think that's what she did. She was one person who looked after all the Balwadis.
So one of the really lovely activity that we gave in that activities that we are giving daily to the parents was looking at oneself in the mirror, shaking hands with oneself in the mirror, waving out in the mirror, and lots of things like that, which are just amazingly simple. But the older child also looked at his own name in the mirror to see how different it becomes. So it's graded in that way. What we wanted to really make sure was whatever we were giving was connecting them to the parent. It should create a bond with the parent should not under any circumstances create tension of performance. The child should feel like doing it, and many of the activities were such that once you have initiated it, the parent can do this again and again for as many times as they want the child to do it, which would really be great, because the activities that are home based, the child can really be a partner at home in the daily activities and the chores that happen at home, and that would create a new kind of child, a child who is caring, helpful, observant, um, there is empathy involved, and these are the qualities that we want to give the children. One of the important things I feel that we must think of is which are the really, what is education for? What are the values we really want to give them? Do we, right now, what happens is there is a rush for what Sonia invariably says, for literacy and numeracy. There is a rush to get the child ready for literacy and numeracy, but isn't there something more that we need? And this lockdown has really proved that what we need is human beings that are really powerful, and human beings that are strong inside. Suman Bali mentioned earlier that Nandita and Sonia have a soul. And I mentioned quickly that all of us do. Can we not awaken this soul instead of getting involved in all these other things that, in what way do they matter in comparison to developing the soul? Isn't that also part of our responsibility, or are we going to try to leave that to the parent? Isn't that a big question that we have to ask ourselves?
Or we can be co-partners.
Exactly. But we cannot leave it entirely to the parent. And in fact, sometimes, because of the pressure of education, the soul starts feeling not okay about itself. That certainly is not all right. Anything that we can do to stop that from happening is extremely important. So when we are saying, let's press the pause button, and when I mentioned that, it's the social, emotional, and happiness quotient that have to be taken care of, I'm really very serious about it. We cannot go on at the pace that we have been going, because we are doing harm to the children. So what happens is, other schools are doing it, so we are doing it. Parents want it, so we are doing it. Now, when you go to a doctor, you take the medicine that the doctor has given you, because he's a professional. So when children come, parents send their child to us, we are the professionals. We know what's good for the children. So can we not take a stand regarding what we will do and we will not do in our schools? Whether they are virtual schools or whether we go back to regular school, can we not really seriously do that? We call ourselves facilitators, but are we not pushing the children beyond their capacity? Just because 5 children in a class can do something does not mean everyone can. And to make everyone else who can't do it feel the pressure of it and feel that they have to perform, get 5 out of 5 every time. Why? What are we heading at? Suneeta is back, so I'm out.
Sorry about this, but actually I'm not entirely sorry, because this does give us a sense of the kind of technological difficulties that crop up even after having checked and rechecked several times. So now let me just try and just very quickly jump in about this. And I'm going to show you a couple of slides. I'm going to share my screen.
Radhika, may I share the screen if possible from
Yes,
the
absolutely. Go ahead.
from my laptop?
Your laptop. Yeah, go ahead.
But in the meanwhile, on the chat, if all of you can start very quickly sharing with me what you think currently is the same for you and what you currently think is different for you. Just words, don't write down any sentences or anything. But just the first thing, top of your head, that seems the same despite the lockdown, despite the health emergency, despite everything that's going on right now, that still feels the same, and at least one thing that to you feels completely different. And I can see some responses beginning to come in. Peace is the same, or has it changed? Anybody else who would like to share what they think is still the same? Or
funnily, I don't. I'm not very. Sorry. Where do I type it?
Time has slowed down. Okay.
It's fine, Anuaji. Why don't you play
Anybody
it?
else? Anyone else would like to share what they think is still the same and what is different? Some more seem to have come in. The importance. Anxiety has increased. Students are still under pressure, so that still seems the same. Connected deeply. All right. Excitement in children. Enjoying time with myself. Anxiety has increased. Being a lifelong learner has not changed. Yes, Nilima, I would agree with you. The same mundane eating and so on. All right. Teachers are busy with online classes. That seems to have changed. Yes. More time to experiment in the kitchen. Yes. Okay. What else? Leslie says the importance of friendship is the same. Technology has taken up a new meaning. All right. Wonderful. Love for children is the same. Mode of communication is different. Okay. Relatives, Sukaina, yes. Sukaina says relatives are the same. Shibangi says institutions saying emotional development will happen. Academics are more important. That still seems the same. Okay. Differences, teaching is taking place outside the classroom. Family bonding has increased. All right. Wonderful. You can keep adding to this as you want to. I'm going to start using some of these to move to where we are really headed today, which is in terms of trying to find learning moments. And the reason why we're talking about learning rather than teaching, if you right now look at a lot of different resources on the web, you'll still find many of them that talk about how are we going to teach the children. But coming from a background of early childhood education, I think all of us would agree that the focus does need to be on the children and their learning rather than our teaching. So yes, there are a lot of things which are very, very different. What I'd like all of you to consider is that although they're different, they're still very, very real. If you went back several centuries ago, a lot of learning that happened was kind of passed on to us, primarily by the ear. So somebody said something, you heard it, you memorized it. Jump quite a bit, and you find that that is being shared through the printed word. And we've got books. And today we still continue to use those books. And somewhere perhaps we're even stuck with those books. Right now we're at a point where because of the internet, we're at a stage where we can search and we can find. And I'll come back to this in a little while. But let's take it further. From what I caught on to what Nandita was saying just before I came back on, was that where do we go with this? Why should we not go on pause right now and make the changes that we need? because we do need to look at this as an opportunity. It may have been thrust upon us because of this emergency, but if we don't take charge now and bring in the kind of changes that we think are really needed, particularly in the area of early childhood education, we'll only have ourselves to blame. So I think we need to look at it in the sense of an opportunity to rethink the whole thing, to reimagine what children's education should be like. Then we can reboot and regenerate. So that's, I think, really, really critical. And we need to think about what the future holds in store for us. The reality is that this health crisis that we find ourselves in is not going anywhere anytime soon. And we're going to have to find ways of dealing with it, not just in the immediate months to come, but the next year and possibly for several years to come. Not necessarily a bad thing to be in. In all of this, and looking at many of the comments that many of you made in the chat just now in response to what's similar and what's different, I'm glad that all of us seem to be on the same wavelength, because we are talking about the human connection still being existent. And we're talking about that human connection being extremely important. And I wish we were using the term physical distancing rather than social distancing. Because we don't want to lose that connection. We don't want to lose those bonds. And for whatever it's worth, we cannot afford to forget the importance of touch. How are we going to bring touch into this new world is something that we're going to have to think about, and we'll again look at this a little later. But I think no matter what we do, we want to ensure that we will use the technology in a way that allows us this human connection. So to focus for a minute on learning per se, then what is it that we're really trying to do? And here's where I'm going to kind of make use of some of the insights that we've had because of the Granny Club. So when Nandita mentioned that I like to look at children's education as being child-centered, I want to actually take it one step further. It's not just child-centered, it's child-driven. Based on what the children need, what they would like to explore, it's certainly ongoing, and it should present a little bit of a challenge. If it's something that we already know, there's not really much point in going down that avenue. But if there is a challenge and something is different, then that's learning. And it's up to us as educators to create that kind of enabling environment. And I'm deliberately using the word enabling because it's the children who are going to learn. So what I was saying is that we need to think about what would constitute an enabling environment. Because that's what we need to really create for the children. The children are the ones who are going to be learning. So given that situation, as Nandita was saying, we're going to have to pause. And the reason for pausing is that we need to be reflecting. Right now, because of this whole crisis situation, we seem to have gone into fast forward mode, and we're doing something all the time. That's not necessarily the answer. We need to be able to reflect before we do. Fortunately, at least in India at the moment, we are heading towards what would even otherwise have been the summer holidays. And hopefully we can use this time to think about what is it that we want to do when we reopen in whatever kind of fashion, whether it's in June or July or August or even September. But we need to be able to use the next month or two to really take stock and figure out how we're going to do this. So I'm not going at this stage talk about structuring the children's day and what kind of activities we should put in. I think with the kind of experience all of us have, that's something that we can actually do relatively easily. But what I would like all of us to consider is what are the long-term capabilities that we're really thinking about in all of this. Just as most of us have been taken at least somewhat by surprise by the extent of this crisis, I think the need for flexibility and the need for adaptability are quite possibly among the most important things that we're going to need in the months to come, in the years to come. And an oldie but a goodie that many of us have used over and over and over again over the decades is learning to learn. It's an approach that you can give it whatever name or use whatever term you want to, but that's really what prepares you for being able to face situations that you did not predict, could not have predicted but have still come upon you unawares, what have you. And it's something that all of us in the Granny Cloud pretty much live by every day: flexibility and adaptability. The best laid plans have to be thrown out of the windows. And many of the grannies share that, I had this wonderful plan, but the children had a different idea. And to be able to go with that kind of flow does become extremely important. And in so doing, we're actually, I think, also doing something additionally that's important. And that is that we're letting children take responsibility for their own learning. And the sooner you start, the better. Just to backtrack a little bit, why are we so worried about the internet? Why can't we look at it as something that brings with it great potential? Perhaps some of us have been thrown off because of the fast pace at which some of these changes have occurred. Definitely Nandita and I and Sonia and several others belong to a generation that did not even have phones in the house. And we got landlines, when we were reaching our 20s. So you can imagine our thrill when mobile phones became available. A completely different kind of scenario. But were we upset because mobile phones came along? I don't think so. We looked at the kind of facilities it provided. It allowed us to keep track of where our children were. It allowed us to be able to change programs with a great deal more flexibility and not worry about inconveniencing somebody. It allowed us to speak to somebody whether you were at home or not. It allowed you to look for information very quickly, get directions, so on and so forth. So it wasn't a bad thing that happened. It happened because of technology. And somewhere we seem to think of technology only in terms of the internet. But the reality is that technology has always been around us. It's just that it changed a little more slowly. And we were so used to it that we stopped thinking of it as technology. Right now on the video, I can see myself, I can see Nandita as well on the video, and both of us are using, forget about the internet and the Zoom call that we're on right now, but we're using one very basic technology, and that's our glasses. Where would the two of us be if we couldn't have our glasses on? I certainly wouldn't be able to read the chat right now. But none of us think of this as technology anymore. Books, the books that we so love and so want to share with the children, they're technology. What would we have done if it wasn't possible to print? So I think somewhere we need to change our mindset about technology. So are we just mourning unnecessarily the loss of old ways? Or are we scared by what all this change really means? And I think that's part of the pausing, and we need to think about what all of this means to us and what all of this is going to mean as we start working with the children again. Now, let's just take one example. whether it's part of what we do in the Granny Cloud or what some of you are beginning to do right now through your online interactions with the children, is that we're connecting through some kind of audiovisual platform. Now, it could be Skype, could be Zoom, could be appear.in, could be GoTo, could be whatever, FaceTime, but we're connecting using some kind of audiovisual platform. Quite often in this process, we seem to forget the kind of opportunities these platforms are providing to us. Just look at one or two things. Because it's an audiovisual platform, I get to meet somebody like we are doing right now in real time. I get to see you, I get to hear you. We're for a minute going to ignore the challenges that we've had in all of this, but the possibility and the potential exists. Look at another opportunity that this provides, virtual travel. I could go anywhere in the world right now with that kind of visual platform and interact with somebody in some far corner. And many of our grannies actually do that. They connect from different places. Our children are in different places. I know it's a misconception, but a lot of people think that the Granny Cloud connects with children only in India, and nothing could be further than the truth. While many of our locations are in India, we also have locations in far, far parts of Canada. We have locations that are in Greenland. We've had locations that are in Jamaica and Mexico and Cambodia and where have you. So the point is, the grannies could be anywhere, the children could be anywhere. That's exactly what, and we're talking about being by and large in the same city and connecting with our own children whom we actually know and have met at some point in time face to face. So there's one part of the challenge that's already been taken care of. Just imagine for a moment the kind of field trips you could take. I mean, I know many of us in early childhood education love to think about taking the children on a field trip, and sometimes can't do that because I don't have enough volunteers, I've got lots of children, there's so much arrangement that needs to be made, I don't have the resources, we don't have the money, we don't have the bus, what have you. But if you're connected on an audiovisual platform, you could go for a field trip anywhere in the world. Okay? And I'm really not joking about this. I mean, all of this is entirely possible. And we can think of many other examples like that. Just a note of caution. If any child is going to use an audiovisual platform from their home, we do need to ensure that it's in some kind of public space where the adults in the home can also unobtrusively or even as part of actual interacting along with them, have access to this in some kind of public space. Just like we took all the trouble while organizing this webinar, we do need to think about where the camera is placed, what will be seen, what kind of lighting there is, what kind of movement we can allow ourselves. And again, this is only just partly a joke, because one of the biggest adjustments that I have to make whenever I'm on any of these webinars is that I have to keep as steady as I possibly can. And those of you on this group who know me know that I thrive on being able to cover the entire physical space that I'm in with any group of participants. So for me, that's a huge, huge constraint that I can't jump up and down, and I can't move around, and I can't wave my hands as much as I normally do. So yes, things are different, but that doesn't mean that you lose out on that feeling of being connected in real time. And there's just one other care as well as potential and insight that we've picked up in the Granny Cloud, and that's that if your screen can allow you as large as life image, then that sense of real connection gets that much more enhanced. You're not watching a film, so you don't want it projected. You're actually talking, interacting with a real live human being at the other end. So if they look and you have the screen size that more or less gives their face the same size that they would have in real life. You just enhance that experience. Just one of the little insights that we've picked up. I'm, by the way, I'm making the assumption that that you can still hear me. If anybody realizes at any point can't, then please let me know. And I will try and pick that up through Nandita or through the chat that I'm looking at once in a while. Oh, has the voice gone again?
No,
oh, yeah, you can hear me. Okay, great. Super. I will keep checking. I mean, these are some of the things that we do even in regular classrooms as well, right? We look at an individual child and say, can you hear me? Well, this is just a different way of doing that. All right. So what I want to, for a brief minute, talk about is the technology that is now available, but that we don't really seem to use for the educational field. Technology that got developed for industry, for the field of medicine, we have adapted and we make use of it. But I think we're really, really at a stage where if we can start to ask for what we need, what is it that concerns us about having these online interactions with the children? Just one example. If a webcam is picking up a child sitting in front of it, I might not know who else is sitting at their side or a little further away in the room or what else is going on over there. Something that I take for granted in a regular classroom because I can see all the children and I can see the whole room. But there is technology available that would allow me to see that. At the very basic, and this is what our children do in the Granny Cloud because we don't have the fancy technology that's available, is that they just pick up the movable webcam and turn it around the room to show you. So it doesn't always have to be a constraint. But can we start thinking about what we need and start talking to people who are developing this technology, share with them what our needs are, and say, this is what we need to make our learning environments far more enriched, far more stimulating, far more engaging. Just imagine, because even when we talk about an audiovisual platform, we're really talking about seeing somebody in 2D, and we're talking about hearing. But what if you could see somebody in 3D? I'm sure most of you have gone to a film with those 3D glasses, and the experience is quite different, isn't it? So what about having those kinds of opportunities? Let's think about what else we need. Right now, there is quite a bit of work going on in the area of haptics. There's work going on in the area of digital smell technology. Because when we start talking about multisensorial experiences, and I think many of you would agree with me over here, that is probably one of our biggest concerns about interacting with children, not in the same physical space, but online through technology, that how are we going to provide these multisensorial experiences? How are we going to let them taste something? How are we going to let them smell something? What are we going to do about touch? A child who needs a cuddle because they fell down and scraped their knee. How are we going to provide that sensation? Touch is necessary even for survival. But the point is that there is technology that is being created that would allow for all of this. And that, by the way, is the area of haptics. And I'm not getting into details about that. I have only just begun to learn about some of this, and I don't know how to bring it in right now, but I've begun to develop ideas about this, and we can discuss that at some point in time. I do want us, though, to be aware that these are things that we should consider. So before we go back to this whole being on pause kind of thing, there are just a couple of other, so multisensorial experiences is critical. There are two other things, and again, I think we do these in all good, quote unquote, good early childhood settings, as we try and do in the Granny Cloud. That along with these experiences, we use language primarily as a tool to think and to communicate. If I don't have the vocabulary, I find it difficult to play around with thoughts. And if I don't have the vocabulary, I find it difficult to convey what it is that I thought about. So that's what we focus on in early childhood education. That's also, to a large extent, what we focus on in the Granny Cloud. And there's loads of material around. One of my colleagues who's also participating in today's webinar has just done a superb webinar for the British Council just a few days ago, where she's shared some of the strategies that she uses with the children. Along with all of this, and this starts to become even more relevant as we talk about interacting with older children, is provoking a search, provoking a sense of, I wonder why, I wonder how. And that's, again, something that is very possible thanks to the internet. And we shouldn't be losing out on these opportunities. If we just go back to, business as usual kind of situation, then that doesn't really help. I see, for a minute, I want to backtrack to the audio and the visual. If you look at a boring classroom in an Indian school, yes, we have audio and we have visual, but I'm sorry to say that the audio is the teacher's voice and the visual is a stupid textbook. That's not the audiovisual that one is talking about. We really, really do need to go way beyond that and bring in all the other senses as well. And yes, we do need to brainstorm about a lot of this. But when we start looking at this whole searching business, what really needs to come into play is that we need to start looking at it from many different angles. If you ask children to look for answers to an interesting question, they very often start off with, the very first thing that they find. How are we going to get them to go beyond that first thing that they notice? How are we going to get them to consider that there might be a different perspective? That if I looked out of a different window, I might see something else. I used to love to do this as an exercise when I taught at Nirmala Niketan decades and decades ago. But we'd actually have people go to different parts of the building and look out of the window and come back and report on what they saw. And you'd be amazed at how different the reports would be. Now, if children can, through these online search experiences, be encouraged to go looking for not just one link, but many different links, deliberately search for contradictory pieces of information, and then try to make sense of them. Okay, so that's the kind of search that we're really talking about when we look at the Granny Cloud experience, and equally easily possible to do over here. There are loads of other issues that we could talk about, but I think I've already overstepped how much I was going to speak, and we lost, of course, some time in all the challenges. So I'm going to stop for now and open it up for questions and answers and comments, and let's see if we can come up with some ideas that we can use in the next few months, and take it from there. Is that all right, Radhika, Nandita?
Yeah, that works great. Anyone who'd like to share something, please raise your hand and we'll give you audio access and put you on spotlight video so people can see you.
Yeah, can I say something?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. This is Neelima. I just wanted to say that I remember back in the days we used to say, what you learn is not as important as how you learn. So I think the concentric syllabus that we used to talk about, that nucleus is the same, and then you build around it in terms of a concentric syllabus. So how you learn is as important as what you learn.
Yeah. If I could just add to that, Nilima, wanted to respond to Nilima that I completely agree that the process by which we learn the how part is definitely way more important because the content could vary depending on the location and the situation and so on as well. There is, however, just one slight note of caution that I want to bring in, because the more I interact with youngsters nowadays, I find we also need to make judicious decisions about content as well. What kinds of things to provoke a search about, what kinds of things to present, because I find so many youngsters so completely out of touch with the reality just outside their door, that if some of that can also be brought in and integrated really well with that process, that would be great.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Hi, Suneeta ma'am. Thank you so much for this session. It's really helped me. It's my first time to attend with my husband, so it's a great learning experience. So the question I have is currently, given the flow of virtual learning and people, like kids, they are more interested in watching videos of different aspects, but attached to the real world is also very important as a part of their growth. So how do we maintain that balance between giving access them to the virtual world as well as to the real world?
I think we're going to have to first stop thinking about it in terms of virtual world and real world, because what is real itself may need some thought. What is it about an online interaction that makes it less real? Is it different? Probably. Not just probably, definitely. But is it not real? We might need to think about that again. It's definitely very, very different, but it's not less real. Whatever it is that you're exploring. So for the moment, I'm going to stay there because it needs a mindset change, really. And let's face it, every generation has worried about whatever new technology was there. You're worried about giving your child a tablet or a mobile phone. Our generation was worried about, by the way, books, because you will spoil your eyes because you're reading too much and you're not reading in the proper light. And the generation in between heard it about the television. So somewhere it's a question of how do you balance and ensure that there's enough time for all kinds of activities. Yes, please, Sonia, definitely do pitch in. But let's at least get this bit clear, that it's not real, it's just that it's very, very different. And we would still need to take decisions about time and so on.
Harsh, I would like to say that discernment, the word that we often think of is discernment. What is it that you do want to expose them to? What is it that you don't want them to? Now, this leads to a very important part where you as a parent and your presence is essential. So as long as you are able to monitor that, it's not at all difficult.
Thank you so much, Suneeta. That was an absolutely lovely, absolutely extremely lovely talk that you gave us. There were 4 words that is very, very important in what I think you said. One was pause, reflect, adaptability, and flexibility. The word adaptability and flexibility had a very deep meaning for me because I've been working with children who learn differently in the school that I taught. I'm retired as well. But it was like every day you change your lesson plans because they come and they take over your lesson and you learn from them rather than you tell them what to learn. And this is what I found on virtually day-to-day basis. And because I taught children who learn differently, I would often have to sit after school and write down what I had to do with them, and then I would go back with that, and it would be a different new game for me every single day. So those 4 words have a very heavy meaning to it. One is everybody needs to pause and reflect where we are today, and the adaptability and the flexibility part of it. Thank you.
Yes, I just wanted to talk about again those 4 same words that Anuradha ma'am talked about, taking a lead from Suneeta ma'am's talk. Adaptability and flexibility, and the first 2 words, which as I'm talking, I'm actually skipping out on those 2. But I think one of the keys should be to encourage parents to constantly keep having conversations with children on what they're consuming on media of various kinds. Because it cannot be a fixed goalpost, because the process of learning becomes very quick with the way they are picking up from these media, audiovisual media. I think parents constantly need to keep having a conversation with their child. Okay, you have watched this today. Let's talk about some of the ideas that have come out of there. And it will be a shifting goalpost, because we may not realize it, but a child keeps learning very fast, very rapidly from these media. I think this is what I just wanted to add, and I hope it makes sense considering what Suneeta ma'am has been talking about all this while.
If I may just add to that, the other reason why I would kind of emphasize adaptability is because none of us are able to really predict what the world is going to be like 10 years from now, 20 years from now. It was relatively easy for parents of my generation to say that these are going to be the careers that are available to you. Today, I don't think we can, they're changing literally every few months. So what is it that you're trying to prepare those children for anyway? So the adaptability is important even from that angle. And that's why we need to include the children in that process. And not make, hard and fast rules about what you need to know and what you don't need to know, and how and when you need to know it. Yes. You pick it up as you go along.
And ma'am, I think it's going to be real for the child always, whether we are finding it virtual or not so physical, because television was very real to our generation, whether for our parents it was mindless entertainment.
And to add to what Abhinav said, in fact, to add to what Shibangi also said, it's an exercise that I actually used to do with my son when he was younger, because half the television programs I never liked. But I didn't want to say to him offhand that, no, you can't watch this. So we would make it a point to watch anything, at least for 1 or 2 episodes, and then take a decision together about why we chose to watch or continue to watch, or why we chose to stop watching something. So there would be criteria that also get developed alongside.
It was really nice listening to all the discussion, and over there were so many issues that are being faced by the facilitators as well as the parents. So something falling in between. There are 2 basic questions that I would want to put before you all. One is, yes, agreed that the virtual world is very important, especially at this hour when there is lockdown and we have limited resources. We do want to make the learning happening. It's a challenge. It's not just about education, but it is also that the learning has to be that kind of an environment has to be developed. Now, there is a small concern which comes on the part of the parent, that giving the access to internet in front of Zoom or whatsoever, there are also other things which are readily available. And it is rightly said, vices are more attractive than, the other, I would say, the other informations that are there. So these days, the children have a tendency, if we are giving them that opportunity to explore. So how to try to strike a balance for the parent? How do we guide them? You know, it is good when their children are coming to us, we are talking about to them about selecting. You can select onto this and then together we decide. But to educate the parents on the same at times gets very difficult. So how do we go about with it?
Yeah, I wish parents would give themselves the freedom to play the way we need to give children the opportunity to play. The the easiest way to get used to many of these things is to literally play a few games to explore what's available. Uh, it's because we cannot imagine the situation the children are in that we seem to feel uncomfortable about what it is that they're doing. Another good reason to do that, and I think that would help parents a great deal, is that if they have explored all these possibilities themselves, they are aware not only of the potential dangers, but they also are aware of the opportunities and therefore then can use them in far more positive ways. And I can see that Renu has made a comment about participate and do small assignments together. There is something that I was going to say as part of the summing up. So perhaps I'll hold on to that part for just a minute, if you don't mind, Renu.
Hi, and thank you very much, Suneeta. It was really a wonderful experience listening to you and your feedback and the input. One of the things that I thought I'd just kind of share, I work with teachers who deal with large numbers in their classrooms and who are actually panicking right now. You know, how do I handle this whole technology? How do I, give the children the same that I would give if I was facing them in a classroom, etc., etc. So I really love this perspective that you brought in about, virtual field trips and, the options that the teacher would now have in terms of exposing the children to a lot more than she would have in the normal classroom. The other thing that actually struck me was literally in terms of, I'm actually a maths teacher, so I do think a lot in terms of manipulatives and things like that. So it's always a constraint in the real classroom in most schools in India about having material manipulatives, the time, and so many problems that the teacher faces in the classroom. But this platform actually gives us the opportunity for every child to have something concrete to work with. The home is a treasure trove of what I would call maths material, and which the science teacher would call science material. So I think this is one wonderful thing that we should actually capitalize on. Of course, I mean, it's not going to be easy to make that shift, but if we can focus on the fact that the home gives you everything that you need to be able to learn in a hands-on. I mean, I know it sounds cliched and all that, activities, hands-on, all that, but they are required. So if a teacher has to teach something that she would probably use, say, blocks for in the classroom or, things like that, at home she could use, a whole series of steel cups or plates or whatever, and there's so much of that material available. So I think focusing on the positives in terms of this kind of help that we could give children is something that your talk actually made me think in that direction. So thank you so much for that. It was wonderful. Thank you.
The whole thing is about participatory and and inclusiveness in learning. One of the comments has often been that if I can't learn the way you teach, then can you teach me the way I can learn? And how much of flexibility and creativity is doable? Yeah.
I'll just respond to a part of what Nilima mentioned right now. It is incredibly important, and I think Sonia and Nandita, or basically almost all of you listening would say the same thing, that we do need to find more and more ways of reaching children the way they need to be reached. In some ways, those of us who have the experience and who have the skills find it easier to do face-to-face because that's what we're used to. So we are going to need to think of other ways of doing the same thing. While we were preparing for this, I was really happy that Sonia brought this up. And she said, we keep talking about observation. How are we going to observe the children while they're online? Because we can, only see them for a small part of the day or just a few minutes, and even then it's going to be a very restricted view, and so on. But the point is, and I don't think we have time and scope for it today, but certainly something that we can take up on another day's discussion, that how are we going to start gauging the learning needs of different children and adapt what we do. And this would, in a way, go back to what I was, in a way, mentioning earlier about the multisensorial experiences, that if we have to genuinely include children, which is a challenge even in our regular classrooms, it becomes something to definitely sit down and think about in a focused manner and create that kind of material as well, adapt the existing material in that fashion. So that's what I'm going to leave it at for the moment. But yes, it is a very critical.
Nafisa, you have something to share?
Yes, my concern would be that in these virtual classes, if a child gets stuck anywhere, how will we be able to help such a child? In the real classrooms, we are able to see, watch, and we can guide them. But how will we be able to do that if nobody else in the house would be able to help the child?
Nafisa, we are talking about early childhood, right?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm partly kidding because I definitely wouldn't be able to help with, let's say, math activities of grades even 7. I'm terrible. But I think I could tackle something of the competencies that one is expecting 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds to have. And even those that I don't know, and I think a couple of you have already mentioned this in the chat, there are things that we don't know as adults today because it was not part of our growing up experience. And the children are far more used to this. Many of my phone settings I have not created for myself because I don't know what to do with that smartphone. But I have grandchildren who will arrive and take it away from me, do something with it, and hand it back and say, here, it's done. As adults, somewhere we need to be open to the idea that we can learn from the children too. And it's something that we also emphasize in the Granny Cloud a lot, that don't make the assumption that you have all the answers. It's a learning experience that goes hand in hand. If a child can tell you that I'm stuck, and this, by the way, I think I really should bring it up right now, because the focus is on being interactive. And how are we going to bring in that interactivity in these online situations? What I'm hearing from a lot of teachers is that right now the online activities have become more of, let's send some activities across, let the children do that, and then at some point in time we check back with them. But if we look at early childhood settings, we would typically have met the children face to face for what, 2.5 hours, 3 hours. Can we not, and I'm just opening this up for thought and discussion, can we not try and see if we could engage with the children in real time for, let's say, half an hour of that time? I'm fairly certain that even if parents are working from home, they would actually find it a bit of a relief if they didn't have to think about how they were going to do something with the child. And even if they had to sit with the child, they could probably reschedule some of their stuff and engage directly with any of us who are doing that. And over here, this is where I think we need to start thinking about what are the activities that we would do as part of our regular workday with a child that can still also be done online. Do we really need to give up on show and tell? Do we need to give up on story time? Do we need to give up on picture talk? Do we need to give up on song time? Do we even, for that matter, need to give up on certain kinds of physical activity? A child can turn cartwheels in front of you because the camera is on. If you ask any of my grannies, they'll tell you that the children standardly demonstrate to them how kho is played, how a yoga posture is taken, and so on and so forth. So I think the real crux of it is because we have not yet really explored the possibilities of what this technology can do for us. We're worried about, yeah, Sonia, just a sec. We're worried about, I need to have all my preparation done ahead of time. Don't we forget once in a while, even in a regular classroom, to bring something with us before the story actually starts? But we get up and go and get it, right? So why is this any different? You can still get up and get it. Huh? So the spontaneity is part of the whole thing. So I think that's really all that I want to say, is that don't be scared of it. Play with it. If we play with it, we'll figure it out. Sonia, go ahead.
All that I want to say is sometimes it is adult discomfort which actually creates a block. So if we take that out of our minds, that, okay, you don't know, I don't know, so let's learn on the way. Let's all of us learn on the way. And I'm sure we can reach there.
Yeah. Hi, Suneeta. It was really wonderful listening to you. My question, I mean, the facilitation has changed and the pedagogy has changed immensely, being in the classroom and looking at students learning from each other, the teacher talk being 20%, student talk being 80%, and how do we encourage students from learning from each other through the mistakes, through having proving things to each other, or having friendly argumentations, and just accepting that everybody is in the same platform and valuing everybody's opinions and ideas. Now, I totally understand that down the track, of course, our tools and our approach would facilitate that as well. But at this point in time, I'm a little oblivious in the sense that I think that teachers are using the tool just for playing certain games or, playing basic facts, which is not what the tool should be used for. And using, conversations or having, allowing the kids to have one tool and participating with many people would be ideal. But of course, there would be much more to think about, that how do we allow that happening in the classroom or otherwise at home.
All right. No, so just a very quick response to Beena, because I'm sure several other people also have that as an issue. We definitely are not using the technology the way it can be used. I'm deliberately avoiding the use of the word should be used, because I don't think we really know what the potential is. And at this stage, we're probably at the point where we should first explore that potential. And I think when Nandita started, that was the right kind of mode to go into, because yes, let's go on pause for a little while. Let's explore for ourselves what's possible. And perhaps in another month's time, we will have a clearer picture of what are the various possibilities? What is the potential? What else do we need? Can we then ask for what we need? And I know that there are lots of very, very talented, creative youngsters around who would create the kind of software that we need. There will be people around who will be happy to create the kind of hardware that we need. I certainly have an appeal to anybody who's in CSR initiatives in local government, at state government levels, that along with, and that's critical because that's the very base of the need hierarchy, that food and shelter is critical. But what is very likely to become extremely critical also is this access to the internet, because of that you can stay in touch with everything in the world. You can get to know what you need to know, including about your rights, and you can also have access to how do you make sure that your needs are fulfilled. I'm even talking about the parents right now, not just the children. There's all that is possible. I'm going to stop for a minute because I can see Nandita has something that she'd like to add. Go ahead, Nandita.
All that I want to say is, when we are playing with the technology and trying to find out what we are going to do, that's what we want all of us to share with each other. Play with technology, figure out something, and please let all of us know about it so that everyone doesn't have to start from the beginning.
Yes.
So let this group be doing that. Let us use this group for that. I figured out something, this worked very well, and let more people do it.
Awesome.
So, Suneeta, shall we wind up? Okay, so a big thank you from all of us to you, Suneeta. I think you did remarkably well with everything kind of going haywire with your speech and everything. And you kept it cool. I would have been, I don't know.
Well, this is one of the challenges that happens.
So thank you so much. The important words which have really stayed today are rethink, reimagine, and regenerate. Aptly put. The teachers and friends, thank you all for joining with us today for this conference. I would like you to give us your feedback about this particular video conference that we've had. Also tell us about what is one thing which has helped you during these times. You can always write your questions and share your thoughts with us at info@resonances.in. We do plan to have more of these video conferences in future. So we hope to see you all again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. It was lovely to meet all of you.
Likewise, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And a special thank you to Radhika for behind the scenes managing all of this.
Yes, thank you, Radhika. Thank
Welcome,
you.
Radhika.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, ma'am.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, it was.
Thanks,
We are
Radhika. Went off really well.